Hey legends, it's Kristi. I just wanted to let you know that we're doing this a little bit different this year. The Conversations with Kristi podcast has so much information for so many amazing people, but I want you to be well prepared and well warned when we're talking about topics that include childhood sexual abuse or anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, so that you can have discernment and decide whether you want to listen or not. So before we begin, I want to let you know that this episode contains discussions of childhood sexual abuse and may be confronting for some listeners. Please listen at your own discretion. In this episode of Conversations with Kristi, I'm speaking with Andrew, who shares his experiences of childhood sexual abuse and the impacts of adults who chose not to act. Now, this is a powerful conversation about responsibility, belief, and what happens when children aren't protected. If this topic brings anything up for you, you'll find resources and extra support on my website or in the show notes. Now let's go and have a listen to what Andrew has to say. Hello and welcome back to the Conversations with Kristi podcast. Now, I'm so excited because Andrew, who is my podcast guest today, basically reached out to me he saw my I Catch Killers podcast interview with Gary Jublin, and he reached out to me and shared his story. And I actually really do appreciate when someone takes the time out to share what they've been through. And Andrew shared his story, and I really thought that everyone needed to hear more about it. So we've had a few conversations, Andrew and I, and we've basically, sat down and talked about, all of the things that he's been through. But not only that, his advocacy. And when I had a interesting conversation with Andrew the first time, was that advocacy is different for each person, and that we all get to choose how that advocacy looks. Some people, like myself, my advocacy journey is different to the type of advocacy other people do, which might be legislative change or whatever. And the cool thing about Andrew is he's now working on advocating for other victim survivors of abuse. And I'm so grateful, Andrew, for you being here and just giving your time today. So thank you.
I really appreciate the opportunity to, or I've already spoken with you quite a lot, but also the opportunity to come in today and talk some more and share what I hope is some useful information for people and important information.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is not only your story, but now what you're doing with your story. And that is you're starting to write a book, or you've written a book and you're thinking about writing another book. And the cool thing about you as an advocate now, Andrew, is that you're deciding to use your story as a way to help others. And so I really, really appreciate that. So I guess my first question to you is just tell us a bit about, your own journey, and also like what's led you to where you are now.
Sure. Yeah. From a very young age, I was introduced into what is now described as family domestic and sexual violence. I was born to an unwedded mother, and my biological father, left before I was actually born. And I always describe us as the classic bridges out of poverty family. We were the cliched story that we hear about so often, struggling to make ends meet. And, so my mum was enamored with a gentleman who was extremely violent. And, so the first time I ever witnessed my mum being physically abused was a week after my 4th birthday. And that was quite a horrendous thing. And it's something that stuck with me for my entire life. We had 8 years of abuse, and it wasn't just, as I say, her partner and the violent man, but it actually really, I guess, on reflection, taught me about how people tend to, I describe it as they hunt in packs. Like for like, they attract each other. And the world that we were exposed to by, mum's choice was a very violent and a very morally corrupt world that played itself out over a period of 8 years. So throughout that period, I was personally exposed to, I think, just about every type of abuse you can think of. There was certainly, it started off for myself personally as in witnessing the physical and the psychological, a lot of coercive control, which turned into physical, which turned into sexual abuse, which turned into neglect, which, isolation, all the things that many of us, unfortunately, over time have experienced and we perhaps don't share enough. So that certainly shaped a lot of me as a person. And to it really, from a very young age, I developed the fight response, which was not I guess, the most practical way to go about life at around 5 or 6 years of age. It got me
It
into a
happens
lot
a
of
lot,
trouble.
though. It happens a
Yeah,
lot.
body defaults, and
Mm.
mine went from a freeze to a fight in a day, and I can actually still recall the time when it happened. So I think over the years, that continued abuse and things certainly shaped how I am now. I'm 50, and it
Mm.
still has
An
very
impact.
much impacted on me, and it's been a very long journey to make sense of all of that. And so from an advocacy point of view, trying, for me, it was a lot about, I become very protective, and not only just of my mum, but in females in general and other children, where I saw things that didn't seem quite right. I didn't really have a filter as such, so I wasn't aware as to the different levels and extremes that things could go to.
Mm.
So which created a lot of problems for me early on.
That's probably also part of because you don't have the language, or we didn't have the language and the words and the understanding of what, was happening. And so
Mm.
anger comes out because we don't actually understand. We're frustrated,
Mm.
we're scared, we're like, there's a lot of feelings under that anger. And that's why behavior is like a form of language. You were trying to say something, but you
Yes.
couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can recall so many times where I was trying to. One of the big things for, I guess, what I call is my monster, is that he was very much the coercive control and the rule by silence was the very thing you never spoke about. If you was to speak about what happened, then it was going to be a lot worse. Not that you could imagine it getting much worse, but there always seemed to be a way. And so I would use my behaviour to try and, as opposed to saying it out loud that someone hurts me, it was, if I
Yeah.
behave like this, then surely someone will ask and someone will start to take notice and ask some questions, but they never did. So
No.
yeah, no, you're very right. So I think when we've spoken before, I used the term, I learnt street smarts really early on. And it wasn't until much later on where I started to develop some book smarts,
Yeah.
and to be able to link the two together and actually, understand what was happening versus just letting it happen constantly.
Yeah.
And so from that point of view, I said, um, you know, having experienced such a variety and range of abuse from so many different people, it felt like there was no escape. And for me, it was very much about just going into full protective mode. And so one of the biggest things around my advocacy work, I guess, is the idea of neutrality and the people that are standing by and knowing things that happen without doing anything. And as you referenced earlier, you're a doer. Let's get on with it. What are you going to do? It's very easy for me to sit at home and make complaints about why aren't they doing more? We're seeing it right now with, you
Yes.
know,
Everything going
what's
on in the
happened in
world.
Bondi and how come someone didn't do something before and all of that. Well, let's get on with it, and where we
Let's
can, make a
let's
change.
change now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
And I mean, look, you probably understand it more than most individuals about that neutrality piece. That's what you said in your original contact with me, is that, neutrality is actually really dangerous.
Mm.
Allowing things to continue when you know that they're not right is dangerous, and it
Yeah.
harms children, it harms people who are vulnerable.
Yes.
And although your mum might not have chosen that, she didn't know what she was choosing in the time because of, she was an unwed mother. She was at risk. She was vulnerable. This person preyed upon her, but there was multiple people in your life that could have probably stepped in and helped.
Yeah, we had, from the very first day that I saw my mum being physically attacked, I went to a neighbour for help. I found her unconscious on the floor, ran across the road, police come, ambulances come, all of those things. And it turned out, to be, we were quite good at saying it was an accident and nothing, and no one asked any questions after that. The neighbour used to see this person come and go, would see me bruised, battered, all the things, see mum bruised, battered, all the things, never said a word. Family knew. That their idea was, we just, our family, there's another whole thing that we can go
Mm,
into around, we don't talk about those things and it doesn't happen. It means it's.
If we don't
But
talk
yeah,
about it, it's not happening.
that's right. Yeah, well, let's not upset anybody. All of those sorts of things. Yeah, so many people. I was obviously the most clumsiest kid in the school. I always had something wrong with me, and I fell over a lot, hit my face on a cupboard a lot. All of those things, and no one ever seemed to ask questions. Think one of the biggest things to me to come to terms with was actually the resentment, and I guess it was a hatred for a long time of certain people that knew what was happening, could have stepped in, could have made a change, but never did. Yeah.
Do you think, like, I know that you're saying that you guys were groomed and coached into not saying anything because you were scared
Yes.
of what would happen if you said something. Like, imagine,
Yes.
I mean, you don't need to imagine because it probably happened, but if you had spoken up, or your mum had spoken up, that it would have been worse, and that threat was always hanging over the top of you, right?
Yes. Yes.
So you learned to just not say anything, and like you said, you carried bruises, and you were always clumsy, and you had to lie to schools, you had to lie to teachers, you had to lie to everyone.
Yes.
Was
Yes.
there ever an opportunity for your mum or you to speak up? And I guess, did anyone push at all? And it was kind of what, or was it always wiped under the, swept under the rug kind of thing?
Yeah, there were a few opportunities through time, and as I started to get a little older, I remember mum turning, it's about 35 or so, and we went to my grandparents' home, and we were there for her birthday, and she was wearing sunglasses in the middle of the evening. The birthday cake came out, and I walked over knowing very well underneath those sunglasses was two black eyes and a cut above her nose, and took them off. And that obviously was my way of saying, hey, look at this, everybody. Let's have a chat about what's happening. And so that was one time. It created some conversation. It created some conversation. Mum was very quick to be able to push that into something else. People started to go, oh, hang on a second. An uncle and an aunt who approached the man and said, hey, if I hear you do this, then look out for you.
Really?
So,
how did
of
that
course,
go?
that just become an incredible, violent few days for us. And his way around that was to ensure that, as most, from a coercive control point of view, let's just cut you off from those people. It's
Yeah.
pretty easy. We won't see them anymore. And if you do, look out. And so, I would raise things. There was a female who would abuse me at a young age and sexually. And I come out of the shower one day at home with mum, and she was sitting with a friend of my mum's having a cup of coffee and a conversation, and I deliberately went in, got dressed, put on some shorts, put a towel around my waist and come out knowing what normally happens at her place when I come out with a towel around my waist. And I walked out thinking, well, this might be a chance if this is what's, normally happens. And he made fun of me, and I said, much happier to see me when I have a towel around me than any other time. Mum just said, what's all that about? And she said, he likes to play games. And Mum asked her a couple of more questions, and people are so good at, they've got their protective story already.
Yep. Discrediting kids.
Yeah. And I was like, it was every time. It was always, again, another time I had an uncle who I was staying with, my mum's sister. She was married to this guy, and I was sleeping in my cousin's bunk, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and he had his hand on my belly, and he was rubbing my head and kissed me on the forehead, and that freaked me out. I'd in the time of experience of sexual abuse, it had only been females, which is quite unusual, I guess, for some people. But I really was like, and this person was such a horrible man. I actually said to my aunt the next day, "Can you please tell Uncle that I'm sleeping in cousin's bed and he's on the different bunk?" And she's like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Well, I woke up last night and he was kissing me on the forehead, and I felt very uncomfortable." She said, "Oh, don't be stupid. It was just, he must have made a mistake." And that happened several times. And in the end, it was just, but no one wanted to talk. How dare you? If you say those things, do you realise what can happen? It was always the discrediting of anything, and it was not to be believed. You're making up stories. You want attention. So,
and dismissing you.
Yeah, and so you got to a point where you just didn't bother. Really, the walls kept closing in, and you never felt as though anyone would believe what you said.
Of course, yeah.
And if I do say it, I'm only going to get into more trouble, and look what happened last time.
Yeah.
not only do you get yelled and screamed at, you get a black eye for your trouble, or you get locked in your room for 4 days and without, food and water and all of those types, whatever come about, So that was the thing that was, the constant, no matter how you tried and the things that you said, people knew about it. And it was like if they would, I would sometimes say something and ask me a question and I'd say, "Mm, yeah, I got punched." And it's like, and then it was turned out, one of the kids in the playground, or he's,
They'd make up a
they were
lie.
playing, the kids were playing in the backyard and they
Mum's
just,
got a bit
an ear
rough.
and elbow, all of that stuff, playing footy, playing whatever. There
Yeah.
was always an excuse. And, and people always bought the story. Yeah, they were happy with it.
Do you think that I mean, I want to touch on some of the sexual abuse from the female perspective, because it's not something we talk about, but I also wanted to just say on what you just said. Do you think that they knew but they were too uncomfortable to say something or to push it? Because
Yeah.
I think that that's part of, I think a lot of people have been taught to just be quiet, right? And they've taught
Yes.
to not, then we've been taught not to challenge, and we've been taught you're seen and not heard from a very young age. And
Yes.
so when we become adults, of course we don't challenge people, because our whole life we've been conditioned not to talk. We've been conditioned not to challenge. Our parents haven't allowed us to have a say. Like, I might not have been abused and neglected to the extent that you were, psychologically, physically, but the language my parents used is children are seen and not heard. You must respect your adult. Parents or adults come first. Don't lie. The boy who cried wolf, all of those kinds of things, right? So that's your internal dialogue, and that's what you believe, even when you become an adult, because it doesn't matter that you've grown up, you're still running from that system of a child that you were suppressed and repressed in. So I think, with a little bit of compassion and empathy, not a lot, but a little bit, I think that's why people don't speak up as well.
I completely agree. And I've actually, gone about making some fairly strong inquiries with particular individuals who I knew what was happening and understanding why. And I've certainly didn't coin the phrases, but I always say silence has a lot to say. And people,
Good phrase.
people only care about shit when shit is happening to them.
True.
Outside of that, if it's not affecting my life, then why should I get involved? Because if you get into shit, you get shit on you. Sorry.
It's the truth. It's the truth. Yeah. If you get involved in shit, you get shit on you. I mean, I have, and again, advocacy work can do that to you as well, right? You're helping people with their personal cases. And the thing about, like I've said to you, the thing about advocacy is that you get to choose what type of advocacy, whether it's being in the trenches with people, helping them through their cases, but that can be re-traumatizing, and you can get shit on you for helping. And I've seen quite a few advocates that's happened to them. So when you become an advocate, or when you're advocating for others, personally, my choice is to help people advocate for themselves, to lift them up. I can't make Andrew or Kristi or whoever go and do the next thing. All I can say is look, these are your rights, your responsibilities. This is what you could do. This is what you should do. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. And I think sometimes advocacy advocates can get trapped into that place. And when we did speak about advocacy, I was like, you choose which way you go. This is your decision. This is your life. This is your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had to learn that lesson, Kristi, the hard way. And when I was younger, people would load the gun and I would fire the bullets happily, like I was ready to go. And the amount of things I become involved in, trouble I was caught up in, opportunities lost, impacts on me for fighting someone else's fight.
Yeah.
Just purely on, they understood how I was built, and they knew if they wound me up and set me off, I'd go. And, I had to learn that, as far as now very much my focus is on, I can only control me. Outside of that, it's everyone else. And your advice, is exactly that. And it really, when our conversation got me going away really thinking, and that's what, mentioned about writing my first book. It's very different, a different field, but the same as far as I've written a book about dealing with the Comcare process for a Commonwealth government employee in psychological injury. Very different to the world of family and domestic violence, but the same principles.
Yeah.
It's a messy process. It's a big beast. It's a machine. Once you get in the hamster wheel, you can't get off it. They control the narrative. They've been self-insured, and people need support, but they also need a point where they can stand against the beast.
Mm.
But if you don't know where to start, it's almost impossible.
And it also feels impossible. Like, I speak to a lot of parents who are stuck in the family domestic violence hamster wheel or in the family court hamster wheel. And because they don't have the right advice or they don't have any advice, it's like literally the court saying, here, file this paperwork and come to a trial or a hearing. And they don't know their rights. They don't know what they're meant to do. They're not sure what documentation they should have. They're not even sure who can give evidence in family court. Like, all of this stuff is like completely necessary if they want to fight any kind of custody, but then they're not being given it. And so a lot of the time, or it's not easily available, or everyone learns differently. Personally, I can't look at a website and read it all. I have to have it in dot point form, small chunks. That way I can process it all. And I know that from writing my own book, actually, funny enough. Like, I learned how I learn, right? But yeah, I just think that a lot of people don't have this information, and having a book like your book is amazing. And quite frankly, I think, wow, like, if you can teach that in that sector, like, how can you teach it in a lot of different places?
Yeah. And for me, it was, I guess, fairly safe way to start to look at how I may do my advocacy more pointedly, I guess, because it was a reasonably safe process. I've done so much research. I know the system. I work in, that my profession is from a HR background. I understand policy, legislation, law. So to be able to, I guess, start in that area and realise the impact that, you have a psychological injury, for example, you're a mess already, but here you go. Take on the beast. It's with endless resources, thousands of pieces of legislation and policy, internal, external, and here's a few links. Off you go. Fill out these forms, and no one's got a clue. Where do I even start, And so when we look into, I said, moving into where my real passion is around the child safety and the domestic violence stuff is, I think that's where I'm moving into. And my next challenge is to take on and really start to look at how do we become better at that and having information readily available, a guide. So you go into family court, what happens?
Yeah.
What do you need? Things you need to know. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the, how do you do it so that you're not going to be swept into the beast with them?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I know, so just recently, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this bit, but my own experience with my PTSD. So PTSD, left the police with PTSD, was very much triggered, and when I left, I was very triggered and very reactive in the process. I resigned and left within 3 months. Like, I resigned, gave my notice, I left 3 months later. It was a long, sort of drawn out process. Anyway, what actually happened with me, and again, I'm caught up in this beast process. I've got a psychological injury from the police, and I was offered no support. And I don't talk about this very often. I don't talk about it often because I didn't feel like it helped my advocacy work in child abuse. So I've just left it kind of out there, but we're talking about it. So I left the police, but before I left the police, 2 days before I left the police, I spoke to someone, and my doctor had been writing notes about my anxiety, about my depression, about my PTSD. She'd been writing notes when I saw her and stuff like that, and I didn't ask her to do it, but she did it for me. And then what happened is 2 days before I was due to finish, I was speaking to a colleague, and they said to me, have you put in an incident report for your PTSD? And I said, what do you mean? And the police knew I was leaving with PTSD, right? No one had told me. I hadn't had a call with health and welfare. No one had touched base with me, nothing. And I said, no, I haven't. And he said, one word of advice, go and put in an incident report. And so I went back to my desk and I found the portal, I didn't even know about it, where I could put in an injury and put in my injury and this was 2 days before I finished. And so I did that, left, have been paying for psychologists, paying for everything. I mean, in Western Australia, there's no workers' compensation for police. So we basically, once you quit and retire, you're on your own. And then recently.
That's incredible. Sorry to interrupt, but that's unfathomable. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just recently, my husband read something. I don't know how it came about, but he read something and he forwarded it to me. And he said they've just recently changed the legislation in Western Australia around claiming compensation from the police for psychological injury, for PTSD, and that the burden of proof is now changed from the officer having to prove that they got it to the police now having to prove that they didn't. And so he sent it to me, and you know what happened? And I'm nearly 6 years out. I had a massive PTSD breakdown.
For sure.
For days. Yes. I was able. Yeah. I think I'm still coming out of it. Like, I couldn't talk about it. My husband was completely in shock. He goes, "You haven't reacted like this in such a long time." And I said, the idea of putting my case towards the police and having them judge me, that was so overwhelming, and my body shut down. I couldn't talk. I was a mess for days. And so I thought and so imagine parents or people who are going through the domestic violence system or the family court system, and they're still being triggered and they haven't been able to get away from what's caused their psychological injury, and trying to navigate that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And look, I certainly understand how you feel when, you said that amount of time after, and it's just like going back to day one.
Yeah.
And the system's designed to do that to you. It really is, that's how it goes. It's like, okay, let's make you revisit again this story that's incredibly uncomfortable, your experiences that have caused such harm and trauma. Tell me again all about it, because I don't believe you, it's that, or it's simply just, well, you've told them, but you need to tell me.
Exactly.
What's going to be different this time? How do we catch you out? It's the system itself is,
It's designed for it.
And when you say with domestic violence, those sorts of things, you've got someone in potentially the most horrific time of their lives. They've just, if they have, escaped, or they're right in the midst of an absolute terror. And the first thing is, let's go back to it. Tell me all about it. What happened? How do we do it? Make it. And then you're basically got, as you said, the burden of proof is a horrific thing. And, you now have said this person's done something, you've got to prove that. And that's just,
And in a lot of cases, especially when and people say things like, and I'm imagining that your family, when you confronted them, we didn't know, and no, you never said, when we asked you, you never told us. Yeah. And you're but do you even understand the trauma and the bullshit and the threats and the death threats and the abuse that I've undergone? And the fact is sometimes it's easier to stay in the abuse than actually try and leave it. People don't understand that, or they use that against you.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, I was at the point where I did everything I could to please this person. I was doing everything I was told to do. And if I just do this a little bit better, then maybe today will be okay. And when I sat down and had those conversations with people, they say, what did you think was happening? And when I said, when I asked you about, or, I asked my uncle if I was to fire this shotgun at somebody, where would be the best place? Now, is that a normal question for a 7-year-old? Maybe not. I mean, I grew up in the separate side of the family in a small country town, which were, rural. Hunting and fishing and all of those things. But to switch from, if I was to aim this at somebody and pull the trigger, where would be the best spot? When I think back on those things, I go, oh, red flag.
That's a red flag.
Maybe ask a question.
7-year-olds are usually talking about killing people.
Yeah. So, and there was so many times where, how long before, I can remember, I learned jiu-jitsu really early. I started to learn to defend myself from about 6 years of age. And I have this terrible fear even to today, and I have to tell friends and family and, a partner, please don't ever grab me around the throat. It sets me off, and,
it's triggering.
Just talk about it. You get a bit, you tell those people, but So you start learning jiu-jitsu and someone
Puts your
grabs me
arm
around
around
the
your
throat,
throat.
and the next thing I'm in just full throttle, and
Yep.
and it's like, hang
Red
on,
mist.
we haven't taught you any of this stuff yet. What's all this about? There's no punching here. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And and I'd say to people, I can't be grabbed around the throat. People grab me around the throat, and I don't wake up. And it's like, you'd ask those people, I told you this was happening. Did that not ever?
Trigger.
Like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
made you think? Why do you leave the room whenever someone arrives? Or, it's like, yeah, and they'd say, you used to do some strange things when you were young, and we'd often, it's like, why didn't you ever ask me? It's like, oh,
Why they did that?
well, yeah, never, yeah, yeah. So,
It's
yeah, there's
crazy.
so,
Hey, it's just so crazy. And I mean, your
yeah,
story, you've been through all the different forms of abuse, all 5, 6 of them. Like, there's multiple forms of, experiences, but it sounds to me like you've been through every one of them. And I know you have. And the fact is that it's just so many people were neutral and they didn't take that little
yeah,
step further to just,
yeah,
help. I wanted to touch on the female offending side because I know a lot of my listeners, we haven't talked a lot about this stuff, and I don't want to go into depth with it, but I just wanted to get your experience as in, how they worked. Do they work differently to the male offending that you saw, and also, in my experience, female offenders can be quite conniving, but also quite spiteful and vindictive and sadistic. But that's my experience. I want to hear
yes.
about yours.
Yeah, no, those points are from my own personal experiences and reflecting back on them very much signs that I saw. And when you talk about female male perpetrators in that sense, there's some crossover that I
Mm.
experienced that very, very different as well. And so the first time that I was ever sexually abused, I was 5. Um, and it was a friend of my mum's who was, I guess, as I say, it's a certain group of people, single mums, young children, many of them with some addictions, drinking too much, smoking too much, miserable, down on their luck, all of those things, feeling the world owes them a favour. So the very first time was I was left in the care of this particular person, and it was, let's play a game. And the game was for me to use a sex toy on her. And it was like, the game was to be, um, let's see if we can make me laugh. And away we went. And then it become, okay, so now you're going to use your mouth. And then it would become, and these things eventuated. But the way in which it worked was, this person was also very spiteful and vindictive, and I was worthless. I was the reason all the trouble was happening. If I wasn't about, mum would be much happier. She would tell me these things constantly. So I wanted to so much. I just wanted someone to notice that I was there and care for me and make people happy. If I did that, then maybe something wouldn't. And so this person used that to show me that you're worth something. I bet you can't do this.
Yep. Yep.
And it was like,
It's the
so
psychological
yeah.
side.
And and like, these people in particular, and not to, hopefully not offend anyone, but on reflection, low socioeconomic area, low intelligence, but street smarts and smart enough to, it doesn't take a lot to manipulate a child, unfortunately.
No,
And
you're right.
when people have the best burglars, whatever, they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that. So the similarity was it's just between you and me. It's our special thing. You mean something to me, and I want to just keep that between us. Others wouldn't understand. Similar to very much to it from a male perspective, and the bits that go that. But the thing between, I guess, as a young male, as I got a little bit older also, but sex feels good.
Yeah, exactly.
And to, like, I didn't have any clue as to what was actually happening. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that feels good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm a heterosexual male. You see a female, and, as a first time I see a naked female as a 5-year-old, and then all of a sudden it becomes so normalized. And it's different people. And it's like, that's what my idea, if someone's like, I had female friends a bit older than me or around the same age. So when they said, we're going to have, let's play, I was like, okay, I know what that means. Well, hang on.
Yeah.
You wanted to go outside and ride a bike. No, that's not
were you
how we
displaying
play.
sexualized behaviors with other kids back
Very,
then?
very much so. Yeah, very
Yeah.
much so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
this is how easy, and this is what like people really, why we need to ask questions, and like like if a child is displaying sexualized behavior at an age that's inappropriate for that age,
yes,
it's what if we don't ask questions, it just continues to compound and other children get affected and other children get harmed. But also, like, how confusing was that for you?
said when a female friend would say, "We're going to play. Let's go and play." I was like, "Okay, well, play for me is we get on the bed and you tell me what to do,
Yeah.
and I'll make you happy." And that was that was my whole idea of what play meant between a boy and a girl.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And it's
it
so
was
it's so unfair to you, because that was
yeah,
never, that's not what, that was unfair, because this person took your vulnerability and your low self-esteem and your need to please and turned
yes.
it against you.
Yeah, absolutely. And even that, though, is another example of the people not wanting to become involved. Like, as a friend of mine said, "Well, hang on." And I was mortified that, "What do you mean? Isn't this what we do?" And, her father's then asking me questions and I'm explaining, "Oh, hang on, but when I'm staying at this person's place, this is what happens." He's like, is that, again, red flag? Nothing. And that's when you look back and you go, like, that's not what we do here versus that's not what we do. That's
That's
not
not what we
normal,
do. Full stop.
Yeah,
The end.
yeah, yeah.
Adults don't do that to children. Children don't do that to other children. Like, that is
No,
not okay. And
that's
if
right.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and that's
Okay.
the thing about what I'm trying to create with my education, is that
Yes.
the minute someone steps in and breaks that behavior, that cycle,
Yeah. Yeah.
it changes the world. It changes
Absolutely.
that family. It changes the rest. And what I'm
Yeah.
really intrigued by is, you mentioned about the fact that these people all like hunt in packs.
Yeah.
Did all of these people sort of know each other, and like, you're in a small town, right? So they knew each other. Did they know what
Yeah. Yeah.
they were all doing? Like,
hmm It was.
gosh.
It was like I guess that's the biggest. I guess let's just call it. It was. I was like a party favor. At one point, I was left in the care of a person who told someone else that, if you're feeling a little bit down or flat, this is, he's really good at making you feel better. Three females on the sofa in the lounge room, had too much to drink. Okay. Dance puppet. That's
I'm
basically
so
what it was
sorry.
like. So, no,
That is
hey,
bullshit.
yeah. And that's, that was just normal. Like that
No,
was,
well, that was your normal,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
normal.
yeah. No, no. But that's what I mean when I look back on that and go,
No wonder
whoa.
you were such an angry. No wonder you were an angry kid,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you had people like using and abusing you outside of
yeah.
the home, and they were meant to be safe. Then you had your own home life, which was unsafe, and your mum and you were
Mm.
victims of this massive abuse. You had uncles trying to harm you,
Yeah,
and harming you, and like all of these people around you. What, I'm amazed you were even like able to trust anyone, because everyone around you from the age of such a little age has basically abused you in some way, shape, or form.
yeah. I trust is again, I value trust with my life. There's very few people, as part of me writing, reclaiming your power around the Comcare system is very much my advocacy is about people who have power and misuse it. I have had my entire life a loathing of bullies.
Yeah, me
I,
too.
for so many years, I've always looked at someone's ulterior motive. Why? What do you want from me? How are you playing? Like, what's your end game? And, my pop had a creed of be kind, be useful and take no shit. And I've tried to live by that. People like I'm kind, I hope to be useful and I don't take any shit. And people get very uncomfortable with the take no shit bit. And and I don't trust people easily at all. And because people let you down. Another thing my grandfather said was always people will soon show you who they are.
Yeah.
You don't listen, you watch, because we can all speak words. Words mean nothing at the end of the day, without the action behind it. It's so cliched, but it's so true,
Well,
and it.
I think to finish up our conversation, I think the best thing that we could do right now is go through some of those behaviors to watch out for, both from male and females. You've already listed some, and to identify and help people understand just how quickly you can disrupt something. Because I'd imagine if someone had probed you a little bit more and asked a few more questions and just sat with you and explained to you that these things were wrong, you probably would have been able to like completely disrupt it. But also, then this is what I've said multiple times, you know, as parents, like you said very early on in this podcast, that most people only give a shit about themselves and what's in it for them.
Yes.
And that's how we are as generally as humans when it comes to this stuff, or to anything really.
Yes.
I think so. For me personally, when I talk about how we protect our kids, well, focus on your own kids, focus on your own community, focus on your little world, right?
Yes.
And you can actually stop someone from harming another child by just calling it out when you see it. They move on to the next child. Sadly, most of them, if they're harming kids en masse, which they do at times, they're going to move on to the next family, next child. But at least it stops it from your side if there's no abuse that you are aware of. So is there anything you can share in regards to, like, you've already pointed out a whole heap, but like the warning signs that were really, I mean, they discredit kids, etc. So let's go through some of those and like give parents and adults some ideas on what to watch out for.
Yeah, I think if we step it right back, talk to your children about the important things, boundaries, what's safe, what's not, you know, really encourage kids to talk about that stuff and know what's the difference, what's the difference between fun and wrong.
Yeah.
And that's a starting point, you know, and listen to your children. Never, ever dismiss what they say.
Yeah.
Because you're exactly right. If you give them another 5 minutes, something's coming. The behaviours to watch out for, changes in the behaviour. If your child all of a sudden starts doing something different, ask questions as opposed to yelling and telling them to stop. What makes you think that's okay? What are you doing? Why did you do this today? How come you've changed? What have you done?
Or what's happened?
And
what's happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like understand, you know, and allow a child to speak to you. If you've all of a sudden got, you know, people in your life, adults around that are behaving in an unusual way, wanting to spend a lot of time, offering to do things with the kids, all of those things. Watch out for that stuff. Ask questions.
Did that happen to you?
Yeah. I was like, look, no trouble. It's such a pleasure to look after. Send him over. Or, you know, the kids are asking for him to come over and play, and the kids weren't there half the time. You know, all of those weird things. Yes, off you go. You know, we're in a different world now. This is, you know, 45 years ago to, you know, all of that. But still, you know,
but it's still possible for
let
that.
me do this for you. Oh, absolutely. How often do we, you know, we hear about, you know, we drop off our children at a place that they go to someone's school that they've never met before.
Correct.
Do a bit of a check. Understand who your children are spending time with. If you're seeing something strange on the street, you know, there's nothing wrong with saying to a little person, "Hey, how are you? Is everything okay? Are you happy?" You know, or as I often will say to certain dads or people I see, going, "Yeah, why are you having such a bad day? What's happened?" And just know it. And all that is saying, "I'm watching you."
Yeah, I see you.
You know, I'm not. Yeah, I know you're there. You know, and I don't like what you've done. You know, and you hear about certain things. You call people, like, you know, we can call people out on their shit without getting the shit on us so much if that's what we're afraid of.
Yeah, I actually saw a video online, and I mean, it's similar but not the same. So there was this video online of this person filming another adult at a park, and he was getting the child to do something, and this adult confronted this male and said, adult male, and said, "Is that your child?" And because this child was doing something for this adult, and he said, "Is that your child?" And he said, "No." And he goes, "Well, why is that child doing that?" And he said, "He's just helping me out." And it was grooming 101. This guy was trying to groom this kid into doing something for him, and he was filming him do it. And so this adult confronted this other adult male and said, and then told this kid, like, "Hey, where's your parents, or where is your family, or where's your whatever?" He'd moved him away from it. So he must have been watching them for a while. And see, you know, like, it might seem really uncomfortable and unreasonable to do something like that, but it's more than, in my world, it's more than reasonable. And as a parent, if someone did that for my child, I'd be like, thank you for seeing that. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and a similar experience in Melbourne a little while ago now. I watched a gentleman with the two was a little boy and a little girl. They would have been around 3 or 4, two little Asian children, and a white male in his probably late 50s, early 60s, taking
Wow.
photos of them in
Was he the dad?
Little Bourke Street. And this was a very pleasant sunny day, and all of a sudden, you take photos, turn around, smile, walk away, took over your shoulder, and I'm thinking, what is happening here?
Are they having a photo
Anyway,
shoot?
yeah, and I was like, he's using his phone. There's no lights. There's no things. This is a bit weird. Anyway, yeah, so I walked over and just had a look for a second. I said, what's happening here? And it looks like you're having a bit of fun. And the guy just put his phone straight in his pocket and said, I'm just trying to keep these two occupied while their mother's off getting her nails done. I was like, where's their mum? Oh, she's just over here getting their nails done. I said, how come you're not over with your mum getting your nails done, to the little girl? And she said, we're just been told to stand across the street for a little while and we're having ice cream. And I was like, and the guy, by the time I'd done that, the guy had gone. So
Wow.
And so that was, for me, it was like, yeah, it doesn't take much to ask a question. I just walked, and mum could see directly across the street, but, not paying a lot of attention. And it turned out they had an older sister with them who was too busy on her phone to worry about what the two little ones were doing. So they were off.
Wow, so quick.
And it was so simple like that,
I
yeah.
wonder,
and I've had plenty,
if
of time for it's been dad, or mum or whatever. But this was just one of those ones where I've just gone.
Well, you've asked a pretty simple.
Yeah.
Oh, what's happening? This looks like fun. You're like making a very genuine, inquiry that anyone could ask that.
Yes.
But what's going through my mind from what I know about predators is that he was trying to move them away from their safe people.
Absolutely.
So that he was getting them further and further away from where they were where they could be seen. So the next step would have been getting them down an alleyway and doing something. I think you interrupted that. Oh my God.
And that was just,
that's just fucking wild. That's fucking wild. And we know, and your experience with child sexual abuse and abuse is that it's mostly in the home, but there's still these people around, right? There's a less than 10% of
opportunists.
They're opportunists, exactly. So you've finished writing Reclaiming Your Power, and you're getting editing, doing all of that at the moment. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's going through the final stages of that, which has been
so
really
exciting.
Interesting and learning. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
I know. And I mean, me writing a book and I'm writing another one at the moment, I know what it's like. That whole process is like giving birth to a child, mate. It's just, it's like this whole world. And, so I'm really proud of you for taking what you've been through and helping others with it. Like I said, we're action people. Let's find a way to help others. So how do people find out more about any of that stuff? Have you got to the point of making a page or creating anything in that?
I'm just in the process, honestly. As I said, it's taken me quite a while to get to where, how am I going to do this and what can make a difference? And so, I'll certainly, be working my way towards that. And I've just started research on telling my story in the second book.
That's amazing.
I'm learning about my family and my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and I'm already starting to learn a lot of stuff that it's like, it all makes sense.
Open some curtains, pull some curtains across and have a look behind.
Very uncomfortable conversations, but it's a very worthwhile thing, and I hope that, I just want to encourage everyone that's got a story to tell, not to be ashamed. Tell your story. It is take you back your power is such an important thing. And, if you can learn from others, help others, support others, but, most importantly, take care of yourself. And, that's hopefully the message I want to get out to people is it's nothing to be ashamed of. And it's, it takes a long time for us to learn that. But
I know.
Hopefully we can get there.
I know. It does take a long time sometimes. And I wish little Andrew had someone to stand up for him and, to protect him or to have cut, just wrapped you up in arms and said, it's okay. And little Andrew just needed someone to hear him.
My psychologist got me to write a letter to my younger self, and I think it's a pretty common practice.
Yeah.
Man, is it hard.
But it's also very freeing to be able to wrap yourself in what you needed.
if anyone is ever struggling with what their values or their purpose or any sort of trying to find meaning in life, write a letter to your 4-year-old self and you'll soon have a roadmap where you can take yourself off and live a better life. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story and for just for just being strong enough to, like, after everything that you've been through, just to keep going and keep helping others. And I think that's your purpose. It went really, at the end of the day, we go through these things to help others with what they're going through as well.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to share. Once you've got your book ready, we'll add it to the website so people can definitely find it. But thank you so much, and I am so grateful for you.
Thanks, Kristi. You too. Take care.
Before you go, I want to acknowledge the weight of what you've just heard. If this episode stirred something for you, please take a moment to ground yourself. Pause, breathe, and give your nervous system a little care before moving on with your day. Andrew's story reminds us that abuse rarely continues because no one sees it. It continues because too many people stay silent. If you're listening and thinking more adults need to hear this, I encourage you to share this episode with someone who works with children, parents children, or makes decisions about children's safety. Conversations like this only create change when they're carried beyond this space. If you're looking for practical ways to act, calm, age-appropriate tools that help adults step in earlier, not later, you'll find those resources on my website, linked in the show notes. You don't need to be an expert to protect a child. You don't need proof. You just need the courage to trust your instincts and interrupt what doesn't sit right. Thank you for listening with care, and thank you for being the kind of adult children need more of. See you next time.